Imagine stepping out of the biting Massachusetts winter cold.
Oh, that brutal February cold.
Right, exactly. So it's February 4th, 2021, and you're walking into an apartment in Canton. And it's just eerily quiet.
Too quiet?
Yeah. The front door is completely locked. In fact, the property manager actually had to use a master key just to get the police inside. And once you cross that threshold, the stillness is just, it's heavy.
Which is always a bad sign for first responders.
Totally. You look around and you see these cardboard boxes stacked in the living room. Unopened baby items, diapers, wipes.
All just waiting for a child.
A child that is never going to arrive. And then you look over by the bedroom closet and you find her.
Sandra?
Yeah, 23-year-old Sandra Birchmore. She's seated on the floor. And there's a duffel bag strap pulled tight around her neck. And it's anchored to the closet door handle.
You know, to a responding officer walking into that room, the scene projects a very specific, very definitive narrative right off the bat.
Right, they called it a suicide. At first glance, the Massachusetts State Police, they viewed this as just a tragic open and shut case.
Which, I mean, you can almost see why if you only look surface deep.
Yeah, she was a young woman with a really heartbreaking past. She had actually lost both her mother and her grandmother back to back in 2016.
Which is devastating.
Completely. And she had a documented history of struggling with her mental health, of constantly searching for some kind of stability. And now she was 2.5 months pregnant by a married man.
So the police are looking at all this baggage and they just make an assumption.
Exactly. They look around. There are no signs of forced entry, no scuff marks on the walls, no drag marks on the floor.
No obvious signs of a struggle.
Right. So the medical examiner signs off and boom, the book snaps shut.
But that's just the official story.
Exactly. Because the sources we are diving into for today's deep dive, which, by the way, include a massive 45-page FBI affidavit and some staggering internal police records, they reveal how an entire system basically conspired to keep that door locked.
And how a few really relentless outsiders finally kicked it down.
Yes. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to figure out how this system failed a vulnerable young woman so completely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if the state police effectively closed this case as a tragic suicide, how did it suddenly catch the attention of an entirely different police department?
Right, because the local jurisdiction was seemingly completely done with it.
Yeah, they were. So what changed?
Well, that is where the entire trajectory of this story shifts. Enter Donna McNamara. She is the police chief of Stoughton, Massachusetts.
Which is just the next town over from Canton, right?
Exactly, just next door. And the very day after Sandra's body was found, Chief McNamara opens an internal affairs investigation.
Right, the very next day.
The very next day. And she does this because the state police casually mentioned to her that one of her own officers, a guy named Matthew Farwell, was allegedly having an affair with Sandra.
Wow, just casually dropping that bomb. Right. And Farwell was married, he had kids. But the detail that set off massive blinding alarm bells for Chief McNamara was how that relationship actually began.
It traces back to this youth initiative, right? The Police Explorers Program.
Yes, the Explorers Program.
And if you're listening to this and you're wondering how a Grain police officer gets tangled up with a young woman in a way that leads to this kind of tragedy, I mean, the psychology of this program is really the dark heart of the whole story.
It really is. It's essentially a junior police academy for kids.
Yeah, and because she was in this program, she was practically conditioned to view these men as infallible mentors.
Which made the grooming process terrifyingly seamless for someone like Farwell. Sandra actually joined this program in 2010.
Oh my God, she was so young.
She was just 13 years old at the time.
13?
Yeah, 13. She craved stability. She absolutely idolized law enforcement, and she was really just looking for a safe harbor in her life.
And Matthew Farwell was her instructor.
Right. He was 24 years old at the time. The Explorers Program, it basically puts these young, super impressionable kids into uniforms, puts them in squad cars for ride-alongs, and it places them under the direct, completely unquestioned authority of active duty adult men.
I mean, it's literally like handing the steering wheel to a drunk driver and then blaming the passenger for the crash.
That's the perfect way to put it.
The inherent power dynamic there,
Yeah.
It completely strips the teenager of her agency. You have this program that is quite literally designed to mentor vulnerable youth, and yet the state police seemed to completely dismiss the danger of this dynamic when they investigated her death,
They didn't view Farwell as a predator at all. They viewed him as a peer.
which is just insane.
It's a textbook example of institutional bias. Now, the state police did look into Matthew Farwell initially. They actually interviewed him on February 6th.
But wasn't that interview in a really weird place?
Yeah, strangely enough, they interviewed him in a school parking lot.
A school parking lot, not an interrogation room.
Exactly. And in that parking lot, Farwell admitted that he was at Sandra's apartment on the night of February 1st.
Which is the day she was last seen alive on the building's surveillance cameras.
Right. And those cameras, they paint a very specific picture.
Yeah, they catch Sandra coming and going alone that afternoon. But then later that night at 9:14 p.m., the cameras capture this tall, burly man walking into the lobby.
And he's totally disguised. Right.
Completely. He's wearing boots, a black jacket with a hood up, and a COVID mask covering almost his entire face. And then he leaves at 9:43 p.m.
So Farwell actually admits to the investigators in that parking lot that the man on the tape was him.
But what was his excuse for being there?
He claims he went over there to break things off with Sandra. Because, according to him, she was telling people she was pregnant with his child, which was a claim he adamantly denied was even possible.
Right, of course he denied it.
Yeah, he tells the police they had a tense argument, he told her it was over, and when he walked out, she was alive and well, just standing in her kitchen.
Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of a detective for a second. You have a married cop admitting he was secretly visiting a pregnant woman who claimed he was the father.
Yep.
He's wearing a disguise on the exact night she died, inside her locked apartment. Naturally, they ask him for a polygraph and a DNA sample to clear the air, right?
They make the request, yes. But Matthew Farwell just hires a lawyer.
And the lawyer shuts it down.
Completely. His lawyer sends a letter stating that his client is just a mere witness.
A mere witness.
Right, because in the bureaucratic language of police investigations, polygraphs and DNA are for targets of a criminal probe, not witnesses. So the lawyer just declines the request.
And the state police just accept that blockade. They don't push harder.
They basically just rubber-stamped it and walked away. A state police sergeant went through Sandra's laptop, saw thousands of texts proving the sexual relationship, but clinically concluded there were no threats of harm.
Unbelievable.
They essentially closed the criminal probe right there. It really shows how the quote-unquote brotherhood of silence operates.
It's not just a cultural thing.
No, it's a bureaucratic weapon. Police union rules or procedural protections are specifically leveraged to stonewall investigations like this.
Well, the state police might have been willing to just bounce off that bureaucratic wall, but Chief McNamara's internal affairs investigation in Stoughton was operating under a totally different mandate.
Thank God for her.
Seriously. Her team secured Sandra's entire digital footprint. And the sheer volume of data that Stoughton PD processed completely rewrites the timeline Farwell gave those state detectives.
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating here is the contrast. The state police looked at a laptop and found, quote, nothing threatening. Chief McNamara's team combed through 32,000 text messages.
32,000 texts between Sandra and Matthew Farwell. Just think about the logistics of reading through all that.
It's massive. And those 32,000 texts exposed the massive lie at the center of Farwell's parking lot interview.
Right, because he claimed the physical relationship started in 2020.
Exactly. But the digital trail proved it actually began in 2012.
When Sandra was around 15 years old.
Yes. The grooming documented in these texts was so methodical and deeply, deeply disturbing. Farwell asserted complete control over her.
And he bragged about it, didn't he?
He constantly bragged about the power he held over her. He indulged in these violent sexual fantasies, sending her messages about non-consensual acts and chillingly statements like, maybe I'll choke you a little.
Ugh, that makes my skin crawl, especially considering the physical difference between them.
Right. Keep in mind, he was 6'4".
And she was only 4'10".
Exactly. And he constantly reminded her of that physical disparity in the text, really reinforcing her helplessness.
It paints this claustrophobic picture of a young girl trapped in the orbit of an authority figure she was raised to obey.
It's tragic.
And the dynamic was already devastating, but the true turning point, the moment this shifts from a long-term pattern of abuse into a literal countdown to a murder, happens in December 2020.
When Sandra discovers she's pregnant.
Yes. She is thrilled about it. She actually makes this colorful, super enthusiastic poster that says, "Congrats, we're going to be parents."
Which is so heartbreaking in retrospect.
It really is. She sends a photo of it to Matthew, and his reaction is just pure, unfiltered fury. He texts back, I literally have nothing to say right now.
Mhm.
You are truly the worst person on the face of the earth.
Because he is watching his entire carefully compartmentalized life. His marriage, his career, his freedom about to completely detonate.
Right.
The grooming was always about control, but this pregnancy represented a total, irreversible loss of control for him. But the actual catalyst, the spark that accelerates this timeline toward February 1st, occurs a little later, on January 20th, 2021.
This is where a friend of Sandra's, let's call her Jill for this, gets into a petty financial argument with Sandra.
A totally unrelated argument.
Yeah, but Jill decides to go nuclear to get back at her. She calls the Stoughton Police Department to maliciously out the affair. She tells whoever answers the dispatch phone that Sandra's sleeping with one of their officers and to make him pay the debt.
Which is just wild. And word immediately filters back to Matthew Farwell.
Obviously.
A fellow officer confronts him about the call. Farwell is totally rattled. He texts Sandra in a total panic, furious that her friend called his job, but then almost instantly his behavior undergoes this radical, chilling shift.
He does a complete 180. He stops acting like an angry abuser and suddenly starts playing the supportive, caring partner.
It was so abrupt.
Sandra even texts his friend saying it threw her off. There was a total 180. He comes over, he's acting incredibly sweet, but he starts asking these highly specific, really logistical questions.
Like what?
He asks for a spare key to her apartment, and he asks to confirm the master code to get into the front door of her building.
Wow. So he is no longer managing a relationship at that point.
No.
He is conducting reconnaissance. He is literally mapping the entry point.
Exactly. And
Wow.
keep that timeline in your head, because what happens on February 1st, the night he is caught on camera leaving her building at 9:43 p.m., shows a staggering level of compartmentalization.
I still can't get over this part.
Right. Guess where Matthew Farwell went? Immediately after walking out of Sandra's apartment.
It's sickening.
He went directly to the hospital because his wife was in labor with their third child.
He had the means, he had the access, and with the pregnancy threatening to expose his years of grooming a minor, he had the ultimate motive.
And Sandra's family, they saw through the official narrative immediately. They knew this was not a suicide.
Families usually know.
Yeah, and when they were finally allowed into her apartment, the physical space did not reflect a person preparing to end her life.
Not at all. The scene told a story of interrupted life. There were wet clothes just sitting in the washing machine.
Who does laundry right before?
Exactly. And she had cats that were left completely unattended with no food or water out, which defies all logic because she had already been making meticulous arrangements for a pet sitter for when she would be in the hospital giving birth 7 months in the future.
But the detail that really highlights the massive failure of the initial investigation was found right on the bedroom floor.
The neck.
Yes. It was a thin gold chain with a pink flamingo charm. It was a keepsake from Sandra's late grandmother,
Oh, wow.
and it was snapped in half, laying on the floor with a clump of Sandra's hair tangled tightly in the links.
And the state police had literally taken crime scene photos showing that exact necklace broken and hanging off her neck when they found her.
But they didn't even collect it as evidence.
No, they didn't. This is where confirmation bias in crime scenes becomes literally deadly. Because they walked in assuming suicide, they didn't see a broken necklace as a sign of a violent, desperate struggle. They just saw it as irrelevant background noise.
It makes you want to scream. And as Chief McNamara dug deeper, she realized that blindness, that willingness to look the other way, it wasn't isolated. The rot within the department was systemic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it wasn't just Matthew Farwell. Internal Affairs discovered that he wasn't the only officer exploiting Sandra.
It gets worse.
It gets so much worse. His twin brother, William Farwell, who is also a Stoughton police officer, admitted to having a sexual relationship with her too.
Are you kidding me?
And furthermore, Robert Devine, a former deputy chief who actually ran the Explorers program and brought the Farwell brothers into it, was also implicated in grooming her.
These men were literally passing around a vulnerable girl who came to them for mentorship, and the bureaucratic machinery was designed to just insulate them from any consequences.
Which is why Chief McNamara recommended that all these officers be decertified.
Decertification is crucial, right?
Very crucial. It means revoking their official POST certification so they can't just quietly resign and get hired by another police department 2 towns over.
But they all quickly resigned anyway to avoid the internal punishment, didn't they?
They did. But Chief McNamara didn't stop there. She handed her massive, damning IA investigation over to the Norfolk District Attorney, fully expecting criminal charges for statutory rape to be filed.
And what did the DA do?
The DA declined to prosecute.
The excuse given was that, quote, the main witness was dead.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
It feels like the ultimate loophole for murder. If you systematically abuse someone and then you kill them, you can't be charged for the abuse because you successfully silenced the only witness. I mean, how is a family supposed to fight a justice system that aggressively protects its own blind spots like that?
They really can't, at least not at that level. The local DA's refusal to prosecute created a massive legal dead end for state charges. The family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, they took to social media, and they absolutely refused to let Sandra be forgotten.
You kept fighting.
They did. But that exact blockade at the state level is what forced a new approach. It forced authorities to look for a backdoor.
Which brings us to August 2024. The local systems totally failed. But the intense public pressure and the undeniable mountain of evidence gathered by Chief McNamara finally summoned a different kind of authority.
Of feds.
Enter the feds. FBI Special Agent Chiney Castrita drops a 45-page affidavit that fundamentally rewrites the ending of this story.
And to get around the local state police and the DA who wouldn't touch this, the FBI executed this brilliant legal maneuver utilizing the concept of dual sovereignty.
So because the state failed to act, the federal government stepped in.
Exactly. They didn't charge Matthew Farwell with standard state-level murder.
They bypassed the local jurisdiction entirely.
The FBI charged him with a federal crime, specifically killing a witness or victim. That's Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 1512.
Which is huge.
It's massive. It's a statute usually reserved for taking down organized crime rings, cartels, or mobsters who silence informants to prevent them from communicating with law enforcement.
Treating a corrupt cop like a mobster. Fitting.
By utilizing this specific federal civil rights and witness tampering charge, the FBI takes total control of the case, sidestepping the local DA completely. And crucially, this specific charge carries a potential death penalty.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the forensics they brought to the table to back this up just dismantled every single excuse the state police made.
Let's look at the digital timeline first, and how they proved he was actually in the room when she died.
Right, because the FBI extracted data from the Apple Health app on Sandra's iPhone.
Yes. And if you're listening to this with a smartphone in your pocket, you know it tracks your steps. But forensically, it does so much more than that.
Yeah, the FBI analyzed the internal accelerometer logs. Those are the sensors that measure the phone's velocity and physical orientation in space.
And those logs proved that the device, and by extension, Sandra ceased all movement at exactly 9:40 p.m.
9:40 p.m. Now sync that up with the surveillance video at the front door. Farwell is caught on camera walking out of her building at 9:43 p.m.
Wow.
The accelerometer data proves she stopped moving 3 minutes before he left.
The FBI's timeline mathematically places him inside that locked apartment at the exact moment she dies.
But they couldn't just stop at the digital footprint, right? They needed to prove it wasn't a suicide mechanically.
Right, so they brought in Dr. William Smock.
Dr. Smock is a forensic heavyweight. He's actually the medical expert who testified in the Derek Chauvin trial regarding the precise mechanics of asphyxiation.
He is. And Dr. Smock reviewed Sandra's original autopsy, and he zeroed in on one glaring anatomical detail. Sandra had a fractured hyoid bone.
That's the small U-shaped bone at the top of the neck. Right?
Yes, exactly. And Smock testified that a fracture like this is scientifically, medically impossible in the position she was found in.
Because she was seated on the floor.
Yes. In forensic terms, it's called a partial suspension hanging.
Okay, so what's the mechanical difference there?
Well, when a ligature is used in a seated hanging, the gravitational force pulls the strap upward and backward. It typically slides right past the hyoid bone without breaking it at all.
It just misses it entirely.
Right. The body simply does not generate enough downward force to snap it in that seated position. Smock noted that he could not find a single documented case in forensic history of a seated hanging resulting in that specific fracture.
So how does it break?
It breaks from inward lateral pressure.
Like someone's hand.
Someone's hands wrapping around the throat and squeezing from the sides. It overwhelmingly, almost exclusively, indicates manual strangulation.
God. The physical evidence of murder was literally inside her throat the entire time.
And it was missed by a medical examiner who had clearly already decided it was a suicide before even doing the autopsy.
And you know, as sophisticated as all this forensic science is, Criminals always think they are smarter than the technology they use.
They really do.
Matthew Farwell willingly handed his personal phone over to the state police back in 2021, knowing full well he had already deleted all his texts with Sandra.
But the FBI didn't just look at his personal phone. They decided to look at his police work phone.
And the digital footprint on that device was just incredibly damning.
What did they find on it?
They found that immediately after handing over his personal phone in that school parking lot, Farwell used his police work phone to frantically Google whether deleted text messages could be recovered by forensics.
You have got to be kidding me.
No. He also Googled whether a person could legally revoke their consent to a police search in Massachusetts.
Wow.
He practically gift-wrapped his guilty conscience for the federal agent.
It is the digital equivalent of washing blood off your hands while staring directly into a security camera.
Truly. So today, Matthew Farwell is sitting in a detention facility in Rhode Island. He's being held without bail, and he's awaiting a federal trial scheduled for October 2026.
The walls finally closed in.
They did.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable testament to what happens when you have a clash of two very different forces within law enforcement.
Yeah, you have the state police who defaulted to the path of least resistance. They trusted the word of a fellow officer over the physical anomalies at the scene.
And then you have Chief McNamara and the FBI, who looked at the exact same set of facts and refused to let the badge act as a shield.
We started this deep dive in a cold, locked apartment with a tragic death written off as a simple suicide.
We uncovered a predatory youth program that served as a hunting ground for men in uniform.
We witnessed how bureaucratic loopholes and confirmation bias create this really toxic brotherhood of silence.
But we also watched the FBI step in to execute a flawless legal maneuver to finally deliver some justice for Sandra Birchmore.
It's a story of profound systemic failure, but also of incredible institutional courage from those who refuse to look away.
Absolutely.
However, there is one final mind-bending twist hidden in the sources that completely shatters the motive we thought we understood.
Oh man, lay it on us.
According to anonymous sources close to the ongoing investigation, recent DNA testing yielded a shocking result.
Right.
Matthew Farwell wasn't even the biological father of Sandra's unborn baby.
Wow. Wait, really?
Really?
That detail alone shifts the entire landscape of the case.
If that reporting is true, it means that Matthew Farwell, driven by sheer paranoia, a desperate need for control, and a terrifyingly fragile ego, murdered a 23-year-old woman and destroyed his own life, all over a secret that wasn't even biologically his.
It really forces you to mull over the psychology of those we empower to protect us. Just the terrifying fragility of an ego that will burn down the world and take a young life just to avoid the consequences of its own actions.
It's chilling.
It really makes you realize that sometimes the clean binary answers, the neat and tidy police report, the locked door with no forced entry, they were just a facade hiding a profoundly messy and horrifying reality.
This raises an important question for all of us. How many other clean narratives have we accepted just because the person telling the story was wearing a uniform?
Something to think about the next time a story seems just a little too simple. Keep asking questions, keep looking past the locked doors, and never stop questioning the narratives handed down by authority. We'll catch you next time.